It's another edition of Time About the Movies. We're starting a brand new month, October 4th, 1991. And I said yesterday we'd have 9 movies to look at. I lied, because it's actually 10 movies, because good old Box Office Mojo has another movie on there that wasn't on the list last week, so they put it on this week, and so yeah, 10 movies to look at. We have a lot to get to, so I'm just going to stop wasting time. We're going to jump right on into it. We'll start off with the first movie that we have here, and that is Denzel Washington and John Lithgow starring in the crime thriller Ricochet. Now, some interesting things about Ricochet was that this was actually written as a Dirty Harry movie, but Clint Eastwood deemed it too grim, and he didn't want to do the movie. But also that Kurt Russell almost was in talks to star in the film, and Fred Decker, the writer of this, was also intended to be the director, but unfortunately that never happened, even though he did write the script for it. And reportedly, a lot of violent scenes in the movie were cut down because of test screenings, and the uncut version of this film was never released to the public, so honestly, that could be both a good thing or a bad thing, but either way you look at it, the movie it's not very good. I've said before, I don't think I've said this before in the past, but if I have, I have, but Denzel Washington is probably the greatest actor we have right now. I mean, he's a guy that he never usually takes a really bad movie. Even the worst movies that he's been in, he's never been the worst thing about it. And again, that applies here. And John Lithgow is actually not a bad villain in this movie. He actually plays the villain role pretty well, as he did a couple of times during this time period in this, and then also Raising Cain, and then Cliffhanger. And he's a great actor. I mean, these are all great actors in this movie. Unfortunately, the script just feels like the script and the pacing and the editing just feels very sloppy on so many levels. These actors really are trying their best to save whatever they could here. But you could definitely tell this movie was heavily cut down, and it really affects the movie's overall enjoyment in the end. It's not a very good movie, unfortunately. It has elements in there that do work sometimes, but not a lot of there to really recommend it. So, unfortunately, this is one of the few Denzel Washington movies that I have to say was not very good. Not really his fault, but just the film itself was not very good. So, that's Ricochet. So, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Joe Pesci in The Super. So a few weeks ago, we talked about the movie Life Stinks with Mel Brooks, which was pretty much the same concept as this one, except Mel Brooks was doing a bet in that movie, and while this one, he's under house arrest, and he has to live in one of his shoddy apartment complexes. And I will say this movie is better, but not by that much. I mean, it has moments in there that I think really are okay and actually kind of legitimately funny, but that's mostly because of Joe Pesci's performance. And you got Sam Simon here, one of the writers on The Simpsons, with Nora Ephron's co-scripting this, so it's not a complete disaster. It's not a movie that I think is 0% worthy on Rotten Tomatoes. It's also one of the last movies Vincent Gardenia starred in before he passed away. And, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it. It's not a good movie all the way through. It does lack a lot of the same... It has a lot of the same problems that most of these type of movies, these generic type of stories do. But I do think it's because Joe Pesci carries this movie more than you would think he would. That, I think, stands out more in this. But, of course, the next year he would be in a much better comedy from 20th Century Fox that would not only be good, but actually win one of its stars an Academy Award. But we'll get to that one when we get to 92. But as far as this movie goes, I didn't hate it as much as everybody else did. I thought it was okay. It could have been better, easily, but I didn't hate it as much. So that's The Super. So let's go ahead and move on to the next comedy we have out this week, and that is Hulk Hogan and Christopher Lloyd in Suburban Commando. If you ever watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 on VHS, you would know that this trailer was actually on that video, and most of the comments that I saw for this particular trailer said that everybody knew this because it came from that videotape, and I was one of the same people too. That was my first exposure to this movie. And, yeah, it is incredibly stupid. It makes no sense whatsoever at times, but, again, like with The Super, I kind of found myself enjoying it a little bit more than I thought it would. I mean, for Hulk Hogan, it's a better movie with him as a leading actor than No Holds Barred, which you looked at prior to this a couple years earlier. And Christopher Lloyd has some of the most memorable lines of the movie. I mean, his line of "I was frozen today" has become meme-worthy many years later. And Shelley Duvall's in here, Larry Miller. Something I found interesting about this movie is that this movie was actually called Urban Commando. It was actually supposed to be a reunion of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, but they passed on this and they went on to do Twins, which was the much better movie. But from a story-wise, this story makes no sense whatsoever, but it does have those moments of just stupid comedy that's just like, it's stupid, but you know what? You can't help it. It's so funny to watch. And that really is what it is. It's one of those guilty pleasure movies, honestly. And quite honestly, it's the best movie with Hulk Hogan as the leading man in it. So that's not really saying a whole lot because most of his leading roles were not that great. But like I said, it's a guilty pleasure movie. It's a movie that is stupid, but I think it's intentionally stupid. I think everybody knows how bad this is, but you go in there and you actually have a pretty good time with it. So I can't argue with that. That's Suburban Commando. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie here as I try to get it. And that is Shout. Pretty lame, I gotta say. I mean, for a romance film, it's pretty lame. As a musical, it's pretty lame. And as a movie that is intended to be taken seriously, it's really, really lame. I mean, it's about as generic and as formulaic as you could possibly get, even with the talent that they have involved here. You see John Travolta in the trailer. You also have Linda Fiorentino, Heather Graham, Scott Coffey, James Waters. Maybe there could have been something interesting here, but I don't know. This movie didn't really work for me. I mean, like I said, it's a pretty lame movie. It's a movie that instantly is forgettable, and it was coming at a time when John Travolta, he had that brief comeback with Look Who's Talking, and he just kept going back to taking these really bad movie roles, and he wouldn't find success again until well into the mid-90s again with Pulp Fiction, but we'll get to that one when we get to that one. But as far as this movie goes, yeah, like I said, it's pretty lame. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Mimi Rogers in The Rapture. Well, this certainly kicks the crap out of all those religious family films that we get today. Like stuff like, I would rather watch this movie than watch something like Breakthrough or Miracles from Heaven or I Still Believe, those type of movies, or Heaven is for Real. And yeah, I like how in this trailer it takes itself completely seriously and says here's what you really should know about this. And I haven't seen the movie, I can't really comment on it, but at least this movie looks like that it is trying to examine the logic, try to be reasonable on both sides, and it does look like a better movie than I think those other movies that we get today are like. I haven't seen it, I can't really comment on it, but it is interesting to see both Mimi Rogers and David Duchovny in this. They would later go on to star in The X-Files that a couple years later. And the reviews for this aren't actually that bad. I mean, Roger Ebert gave it a very positive review, so did Entertainment Weekly. So, could be worth something. I'm not going to rush out to see it, but my curiosity is piqued, though. I do think it looks a lot better than some of the crud we get today. I mean, this movie looks like it could easily beat the crap out of something like Breakthrough or Miracles from Heaven or Heaven is for Real, those type of movies. But, that's just my thought on it, though. So let's go from The Rapture to horror. It's plain and simple. Well, this is one of the few NC-17 movies that actually wasn't bad. But, yeah, you could definitely tell that there was more of an emphasis on getting more sex and violence in this. But, I mean, I thought the movie itself was pretty good. I like Teresa Russell's performance in this. I like that she doesn't just play a character. She also addresses the audience with these monologues that are actually very unique and interesting. And it's a pretty good movie all around. Like, I won't say it's a great movie all around, but I think it is a lot better than people give it credit for. It's a movie that I think works solely because of Russell's performance. The action overall is pretty good. The dramatic elements are very good as well. Can get very predictable at times, very cliched, very formulaic, but it's not terrible. It's not a bad movie. In fact, I would say it's actually more of a good movie than most people would give it credit for. So, if you haven't seen it, I'd say definitely check it out. Horror. That's all I gotta say. So let's go ahead and move on to another movie that's on the complete far end of the spectrum from horror. Reese Witherspoon making her feature film debut in The Man in the Moon. So, as I said, this was Reese Witherspoon's feature film debut. This was kind of what launched her career. And it's a pretty good movie to start off on. Overall, the movie itself is very good. Not only is she great in this, you have Sam Waterston in this, Tess Harper, Jason London, these people giving all these great performances, and it is a very good coming-of-age story. It's a nicely filmed movie. The script is overall very good. The dramatic elements are not over the top. They're not cheesy. They're perfectly solid in this, and you could buy the chemistry between Witherspoon and London as this couple. It's an overall really good movie. It's a very underrated film that I don't think a lot of people really talk about all that much, but I can definitely see the appeal of it. It's a very good, well-made film. Definitely check it out if you can get a chance to see it. It's The Man in the Moon. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie here, and that is Liza Minnelli in Stepping Out. So this is based off of a Broadway play by Richard Harris, and for Liza Minnelli, it was a big comeback for her because after starring in Cabaret, which won her an Academy Award, she did a couple of movies in the 70s that didn't turn out so well. Then she had a comeback with Arthur in 1981, did a couple of other movies that didn't play out so well, so this was supposed to be her comeback for the 90s, and this was actually supposed to come out in the spring to coincide with her New York concert show that she was having, but because Paramount Pictures was going through this big corporate restructuring, they actually delayed the film to the fall, and you would think maybe it's because of that, maybe the movie or something like that, that the movie probably didn't turn out as well as it did, but I mean, for the most part, the movie is just okay. I mean, it's not something that's going to really, be incredibly amazing, something that's an underrated gem or something, but for what it is, I had fun with it. I think the cast in here works very well. It's not only you have Liza Minnelli, but you also have these great actors from not only stage and screen, but Broadway, Tony Award winners. You got people like Bill Irwin, Ellen Greene, Jane Krakowski, Andrea Martin, Julie Walters, Shelley Winters, Nora Dunn, just this amazing cast here. And they are very funny, and they do work off each other very well. The musical numbers as a whole are pretty good for the most part, but it's a movie that's just kind of I'm glad I saw it, but I'm not in a rush to see it again anytime soon. I think it is just a perfectly solid movie. Could it have been a whole lot better? Yeah, it could have been, but for the most part, it didn't really become the comeback that Minnelli was hoping for in the 90s, but I mean, like I said, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible, but it really could have been a whole lot better. So, if you see it, it's worth seeing at least once. But other than that, I don't think you're going to get any more out of it after that. But, like I said, I'm glad I saw it. So, that's Stepping Out. So, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, which is probably the best new release of the weekend. River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves in Gus Van Sant's My Own Private Idaho. So you've got River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves in pretty much a modernized version of Shakespeare's Henry IV and Henry V. And, I mean, it's by Gus Van Sant, who just had done Drugstore Cowboy, which was an amazing movie, and this is a really good movie, too. Has a great cinematography, the great cast involved in it, a very good story to work with, and it just shows that Gus Van Sant was this rising director that was really coming into his own and showing off these incredible elements that he was bringing to his movies. And it's a very good movie. It's a really good, well-made film. It's a movie that, if you want to see the best of Van Sant's work, this is definitely a must-watch movie. So there you go. That's My Own Private Idaho. Now let's get on to the final movie at last, and that is Patsy Kensit in 21. Of course, Patsy Kensit was most notably known for a role in Lethal Weapon 2, playing the love interest to Mel Gibson's character. And she had a couple of other movies that came out after that were mixed movies that didn't quite work as well as they could have been. But her career didn't really take off as much as I think she wanted it to. But I will say she is one of the strongest things about this particular movie. Unfortunately, the movie itself really isn't all that great. I think it's a movie that's trying a little too hard, but the real thing that makes it stand out is Kenshin and Rufus Sewell in this movie. I think those two really are the best things about this movie, and the things that do make it somewhat passable as a film. I think it could have been a whole lot better script-wise, but if you want to see it just to see Patsy Kensit really give it her all in this performance, I think it's definitely worth it just for that alone. Her and Sewell, I think, really are the best things about this particular film. Could have been a whole lot better, but it wasn't a bad movie whatsoever. That's pretty much all I have to say about 21. And finally, we have wrapped up another edition of Time About the Movies, probably the longest one that we've done. So many movies came out this particular week, but next week, not as many. There are still a couple of movies that we'll look at, including Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer and Frankie and Johnny, the latest Ernest movie, Ernest Scared Stupid, Wolfgang Petersen's Shattered. We'll also take a look at, as I'm looking at the list, Ken Wall's The Taking of Beverly Hills, Little Man Tate, Homicide, and also City of Hope. So, still a lot of movies, but not quite as many as we had this past week. So, with that said, thank you guys for sticking around here, and if you want to see more videos like this, check out the previous page, check out the playlist on there with along with the previous episode, and I will see you guys next time for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.